Hey, folks. My name is Rashan Colbert. I'm the head of policy at dYdX Trading. We run a decentralized trading protocol called dYdX. So I'm here to talk a little bit today about our DeFi policy principles. Because I've been thinking at a high level, how can we communicate to people how we're thinking about what DeFi policy should look like in the future? So a little bit about dYdX. So dYdX Trading is founded by Antonio Giuliano in 2017. He's still our CEO today. We're based in New York City. dYdX is, like I said, it's centralized trading protocol, a DEX, for the trading of perpetual futures. We're one of the biggest DEXs in the world with about $1 billion to 1.5 billion in trading volume a day right now. That's around 10% of the DEX market total. So we're basically flipping every day between number one and number two with us and Uniswap. Give a little context. So in fall of 2023, we open sourced the version 4 of the protocol with our own chain, the dYdX chain. It's a decentralized standalone blockchain with Cosmos technology, self-custodial, everything denominated in USDC, all fees accrue to dYdX token holder. So it is a decentralized protocol. So before I get into the principles a little bit, I want to talk about what we believe in at a high level. So number one, that DeFi is different. You can't fit it into the same regulatory box as the financial infrastructure that's come before. New technology means new trade-offs. There are new benefits and new risks. Those have to be accurately and adequately dealt with. And we think that new legislation is a way to do that. We also believe that DeFi should flourish in the United States. I mean, this is that sounds like it's obvious, but a lot of people do not believe that that should be the case. We see attempts from policymakers. We see attempts from people in the business community to make sure this technology is overseas, both, I think, intentionally and inadvertently with some piece of legislation. So we think it should flourish here. And thirdly, the time to act is now. The United States can often afford to move a little bit later than some other places. We can use the world as our sandbox to see what types of regulations and policy work in other jurisdictions, in other countries. But I think that there's a golden moment and there's a fine line, and we're nearing that now. If we don't move in the near future, the United States will be left behind. All right. So our principles, high level, there's 6 of them. Consumer protection, disclosures, market integrity, equality of access, criminal activity, and innovation. So the first, consumer protection, what's in the best interest of the consumer? We believe that user funds should be secured through safe and transparent mechanisms on DeFi protocols. So this is things like self-custody. You should have control over your funds yourselves. Transparency. We should be able to see what's going on. I think the technology should also be open source. Obviously, there are steps. There's a path to get to each of these things. You don't come out the gate in a perfect state of open source and necessarily have full transparency. But if a DeFi protocol isn't building toward this, then it may not be in the best interest of consumers. So consumer protection, number one. Number two, disclosures. How is important information shared with others? Users should have access to accurate and complete information about the DeFi protocols they use. Again, this is the open source nature. This is documentation that should be accurate. There should be user privacy. That information should be secure, and decentralization. Again, that's a part that's on a sliding scale. You move toward decentralization, progressive decentralization, as we called it at dYdX. But protocols should be moving this way. Third, market integrity. So how does DeFi fit into the greater financial ecosystem? DeFi protocols should be financially and technically secure. So along with cybersecurity, which when I've talked with policymakers often and who understand DeFi, this is pretty quickly where they go. They say, okay, great, user control their own funds, but what if it's hacked? That's a good thing to be worried about. So cybersecurity standards must be optimal. You must be following all the best practices and be as secure as possible. But along with that, there must be a financial, structural soundness to protocols. They have to be well thought out so that manipulation isn't easily conducted. Obviously, it's possible to manipulate any market, but there should be safeguards. There should be protections against manipulation. All right. Fourth, equality of access. Access is critical in crypto and in DeFi. Who gets to use it? We believe that all users should have equal access to DeFi protocols. No advantage participants, not for the government, not against the government. We've been also looking at MEV as part of this. Like, how can we make sure that when people use protocols, they're again kind of getting what they signed up for? Criminal activity. How do we deal with bad actors? We love crypto. I think that this room is filled with people who have our best interests at heart, but we know that there are people looking to take advantage of others within our space. So how do we deal with that? DeFi protocols should empower law enforcement to be able to best recover from incidents. They empower law enforcement again by reinforcing the transparency and the equality of access we talked about before. It should be an ease of auditability. This is a critical piece. Right now in our financial ecosystem, it's critical that regulations work so that government and lawmakers, law enforcement can see anything into companies to make sure that they're making the best decisions. Well, if a protocol is transparent, and they can audit it just like anyone else, any time of the day. We have to think about national security. How does this work? And also, there should be appropriate incident disclosures. If something happens on a protocol, and if it's regulated in some way, then there should be a disclosure. There should be transparency here. And then lastly, innovation. Again, DeFi should flourish in the United States. So it should be able to freely develop to promote competition. So we're looking at national competitiveness. How are we squaring up against our competitors on the world stage? Obviously, it's critical, I think, that this innovation happens here. Should be permissionless. Anyone should be able to access this technology, to build this technology without having to get permission first. And this should encourage competition within the United States. Obviously, this means there are still many open questions to be answered. Who is responsible ultimately for these things? How do we translate these principles into law? How do existing players fit into this structure? And how do we also measure decentralization? So, and many, many more. This really is supposed to be the start of a conversation that would love to hear from the people who are in this room. From how do you think about these ideas? What can make them stronger? What principles should we be adding to this or taking away? So I hope to hear from you. Again, I'm Rashan Colbert, Head of Policy at dYdX, and thanks for your time.